Grunberg, and Ben Landsberg of Wonderly. That's it for the Daily. I'm Serena Tavernise. See you tomorrow.
Support for this podcast and the following message comes from BlackRock.
Hi, I'm Oscar Polito, host of The Bid, a podcast from BlackRock, where we break down what's happening in the world of investing. This week, we're talking with Larry Fink, Chairman and CEO of BlackRock. This year, Larry's annual letter states, "It's time to rethink retirement." We'll explore Larry's thoughts on challenges like...
What's up, George? Oh, you're fine. All right. All right, sounds good.
where the global capital markets are part of the solution. Listen to the episode on The Bid and subscribe for market insights from BlackRock's thought leaders.
AI is giving robots new power.
A robot was able to decode the human brainwave and perform very well the actions that the humans were thinking.
The godmother of AI on bringing generative artificial intelligence into the physical world, and why academia and big tech need each other to make that happen.
There are so many human-centered applications that desperately need machines' help.
I'm Nyla Blue from Axios. This is One Big Thing. Fei-Fei Li is widely known as the godmother of AI, thanks to her groundbreaking research in the field. You can draw a straight line from her early work to the generative AI of today. Now she's at the forefront of what comes next, which includes bringing together generative AI and robotics for use across industries.
We can now take these pilot ideas from public sector or academia and actually scale it up and make it really good and put it in people's heads to use.
I visited Dr. Li's lab at Stanford last week and then spoke with her about the very latest applications of AI and what's at stake in their development. Fei-Fei Li is the co-director of the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. Welcome to One Big Thing.
Thank you, Nyla.
I wonder if you can start by taking us back to a pivotal moment in your career, the development of ImageNet, and how you taught machines to essentially see the world around us. How did that work?
Yeah, well, ImageNet was, the project was started in 2006, and the milestone kind of got achieved in 2012, and now it feels ancient times in AI timeline. And that was a era that was pre-deep learning. What that means is most of the AI algorithms we were using are not massive neural networks. It was also the relatively early days of internet, so the concept of big data was just starting to come to our people's mind. And I was a researcher focusing in teaching computers to be visually intelligent. Part of AI's long quest is enabling machines to do things people can do, and seeing objects, seeing intelligently is part of that. And it was a struggle as a field. We couldn't get computers to recognize everyday objects from chair to microwave to cats. And my student and I had an epiphany moment after accumulation of years and years of research around 2006, 2007, that big data needs to be part of the story. So there was no big data that anybody can hand you a lab and say, here's your big data and train your model. So we have to stop everything and just build a big data set called ImageNet. Of course, a lot went into it and a lot of because it was just not a known path in the world of AI. And we spent 3+ years putting together a data set of 15 million highly curated images from the internet, meaning like there's a lot of thoughts went into the accuracy and the broadness of this data set.
So that idea of data, I think people outside of the field don't think about how important data is to AI. Can you explain that and also trace that line to generative AI and products like ChatGPT today?
Yeah, so before ImageNet project, our machine learning algorithms were very small, didn't have many parameters, and they're trained on very small number of data points. For example, to recognize 20 different everyday objects like cows and cars and cats and lamps. Just select 20. We as a field, the entire field, were using a few thousand to 10,000 images, and that is a very small number of the images. But to give you a contrast, right? Children, as soon as they were born, they see the world, they open their eyes, they're taking continuous information from nature, and if you convert that, we're talking about millions and millions of imageries in a short amount of time. And that's just a very different scale in terms of learning, not to mention evolution has trained generations of the nervous system. So we realized if you give the machine learning algorithms enough data, it learns to extrapolate information it hasn't seen before. Like if you give it many different objects in the world, it can never recognize a new type of apple. So that insight became the big data insight in AI. One of the main bet of AI since then is the bet on data. Is that models with larger and larger number of parameters and larger number of training data can become more and more powerful to the point now there's a technical term called scaling law in large language models from GPT-1 to GPT-2 to GPT-3 to ChatGPT to GPT-4. It follows this scaling law of powerful result as you increase data and parameters. So there is a very clear through line between the invention of ImageNet all the way to today's large models.
So you are the co-director of the Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Lab, which I had a chance to see today, actually, your lab, and see some of these robotics in action. How are you envisioning this tech showing up in people's everyday lives? Like, how are you hoping to marry these two technologies?
I think at the end of the day, robotics is a form of embodied intelligence, and humans is the perfect example of embodied intelligence. For example, we talk to each other, we also cook omelet, we also enjoy watching a movie, and we make phone calls. All these are part of the embodiment. Robotics is very much emphasizing on the physicality of that embodied intelligence, but we already today, you have seen my students work using language as an instruction to train and instruct robotic arms to perform tasks, right? We also use vision. Perception and vision is very much the bread and butter of robotics because you have to do things and navigate in this world, and you have to solve the perception problem. Otherwise, your robot is not going anywhere or doing anything. So these are all deeply intertwined areas of research and technology in AI.
So in one of these applications you're working on, the thoughts that you think could then have a robot kind of perform these tasks.
Yeah, we showed you a early pilot study of a non-invasive brain-robot interaction, which is collecting EEG signals through EEG caps, which is completely non-invasive on the human's head. Just put the hat on the skull, and if you think useful thoughts that can instruct robots, like pick up this orange, dice it, and this as different roles, right? It's like if you go to a hospital, you go to GI for gastric issues, and then you go to, neuro if you have a headache. So I think that in a world of technology and innovation and scientific discovery, tech industry and academia do play different roles. For example, in academia, we are not driven by immediate profit evaluation. That gives us more freedom to do blue sky research or to conjecture risky research. Like image lab is so risky. I don't think anybody in industry would have been able to do it. But I was in academia and I did it. And also, academia is a natural setup to do multidisciplinary research, because if you look at Stanford campus, you've got medical school and engineering school within walking distance to each other, and it's very natural for us to collaborate with neuroscientists and doctors. In the meantime, I think tech industry is also has a very exciting era. So I also live in some parts of this tech industry where we can now take these pilot ideas from public sector or academia and actually scale it up and make it really good and put it in people's heads to use. And that's the job of commercial sector, and we need that as well.
I know we're almost out of time, so I just want to ask you about this whole idea of human-centered artificial intelligence and what you think that really means and how that relates to what we've been talking about.
Yeah, for me, I think human-centered AI truly means that we need to recognize that the development, deployment, and governance of this powerful technology of 21st century needs to focus on human well-being, human community, and human society. And this is really the root of the founding of Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI, is that we believe there's no independent machine values. Machine values are human values. And when we design AI to deploy to people, we need to be very careful to make sure it mitigates bias issues, it respects privacy, it delivers value to people, and respect dignity, and all this. And in the meantime, there's just endless possibilities of using AI for human good. Think about rescue workers. Think about climate change prediction, like California's wildfire prediction or spotting wildfire. Think about healthcare delivery, keeping our seniors and patients safe. That's also part of human-centered AI.
Would you say then that you're still optimistic about this? As we talk about AI, oftentimes people have a note of warning. Did they want to add to that? How would you describe how you're thinking about that now?
The arc of human history has proven that we have done a lot of good things. We have created a lot of technology that helped people, expanded prosperity, democratized medicine, education, and information, transportation. But we have also used every single tool we have invented to hurt each other, to harm each other, and to bring hurtful consequences, intended or unintended. This is why it's a collective responsibility. If I have any optimism, it has to rest upon people, not the technology. Is that I believe our generation and the next generations will have to rise to the occasion and be responsible in how to use and govern this technology.
Feifei Li is the co-director of the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence, is often referred to as the godmother of AI. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lila.
Okay, so you heard Dr. Li talking about the pilot robot project that she showed me at Stanford. Well, my colleague Ryan Heath, Axios' global tech reporter, was also there with me. So before we go, I wanted his take on the marriage of generative AI and robotics. Ryan, so you and I were at Stanford last week visiting different labs, including Dr. Lee's Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence Lab. I was pretty blown away by the things that they're prototyping, but you're the tech reporter,
For me, I really was able to absorb that ranges all the way from how AI eventually will have to try and mimic a lot of biological systems if it's ever going to get to that truly advanced level of being super powerful, through to the challenges that Feifei and her team work with, trying to understand what is called spatial intelligence, where the AI needs to perceive what's around it, not just consume a bunch of text. And then also through to what are all of the national security implications of the sorts of AI that we've all been thinking about, those chatbots.
One of the things that was so pivotal to me to understanding AI is data. How has ChatGPT and generative AI changed the data landscape for what is needed for machine learning?
Well, I think what OpenAI were really able to demonstrate with ChatGPT is the more you feed into the system, the more it can really stun you with the way it feels like it's a human that you're interacting with. And that is not necessarily the case for all the reasons you might want to use AI. So bigger is not always better, but OpenAI really demonstrated that you feed more into that system and you can really impress people with the human-like responses. But, you know, there's a lot of things we need to do in our world that aren't language-based. And that's where the things that we see with ChatGPT don't get us all the way.
Can you explain what the gaps are right now? Because I think people who read sci-fi think, oh, we can just talk to a robot and it'll do what you want, and that doesn't really, like, that's how it works in Star Wars.
Yeah. So if you are consuming a bunch of data when you're training a model, people often talk the same way or structure a sentence in the same way. But when people move physically through the world, every single time we walk to the corner store or we interact with our fridge, we do it in a different way. We're not using the equivalent of the exact same words to perform those tasks. And we have to move in a 3D world, and text is a 2D world. So everything about how you translate what you might feed into an AI model into how a robot is going to operate, for example, that's just a whole nother level of difficulty. And then the other way to think about it is that you can interface and interact with AI in lots of different ways. So one way is typing, and you're sitting there at your computer and you're dealing with the chatbot. But other people just prefer to deal with something that looks or feels like a human. They prefer to talk rather than type. And so when you bring in those extra elements, it makes the AI harder to pull off if you want the AI that you're dealing with to be a robot rather than a chatbot. It's basically another way to do it, and it's a lot more complicated.
So we've moved out of the theoretical. How far away are we from the practical of this really showing up in people's daily lives?
It does show up in different ways. You can get your coffee made by an AI-powered robot right now, but it isn't going to be very good at stacking your dishwasher. The honest answer is you can teach your 7-year-old to stack the dishwasher better than a team of researchers at Stanford can teach it to stack the dishwasher if they put a whole year's worth of training into it. And so that just shows you how far away we are from getting an all-powerful AI in our lives. And it doesn't mean we're not going to get there, and the rate of progress is really quite astonishing. But we can all relax a little bit. If a robot can't stack a dishwasher successfully, it isn't going to take over the world just yet.
Ryan Heath is Axios' global tech reporter. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Nyla.
And that's it for this week's edition of One Big Thing. You can send us a voice memo with your feedback or story ideas. The number is 202-918-4893. The One Big Thing team includes supervising producer Alexandra Botti and sound engineer Jake Howitt, who also composed and produced our music along with Alex Sugiyard. Sarah Kaylani Gu is the executive editor of Axios Live and New Platforms, and Asia Whitaker Moore is Axios' editor-in-chief. I'm Nyla Boodoo. Thanks for listening, stay safe, and we'll see you back here next Thursday.
In the small hours of a black night.
Celtics and get to the NBA Finals, in my opinion.
That's Ryan Fannin, the voice of Villanova basketball. Thanks a lot.
Great being with you.
You're listening to All Things Considered from NPR News.
Support for NPR comes from this station and from Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for dedicated and forward-thinking individuals to join their growing team. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers. From Procter & Gamble, maker of Metamucil, a fiber supplement containing psyllium, a plant-based fiber for trapping and removing waste in the digestive system, designed to be taken every day. More at metamucil.com. From Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at fisherinvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. And from the Public Welfare Foundation, committed to advancing transformative youth and criminal justice reforms.
Support comes from Voltage, located in Oakland. Open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 to 5 Ojai. You can stop in to view the constantly changing showroom displays and get fresh ideas for your outdoor and indoor living spaces. Voltage focused on bringing inspired living spaces to the tri-state region for 33 years. VoltageFurniture.com. That's VoltageFurniture.com.
If you're looking for an alternative radio station with a focus on Cincinnati's diverse and talented music scene, Radio Artifact might be for you. Based in Northside, they're a music venue and radio station. Radio Artifact streams on our website and through our mobile app.
Eastbound 275 between Crimson Pike and 75. There's a wreck blocking the 3 right lanes. Southbound 71 after Field Turtle Base Montgomery, a wreck there. And northbound 75 after 74.
This is 91.7 WVXU Cincinnati and 88.5 WMUB Oxford. Cincinnati Public Radio for the greater Cincinnati and Oxford communities.
We have just seen people to say these injuries, they are so severe that you will need so many resources that we decide that you will wait just there.
At a hospital in Gaza today, doctors are deciding which patients to stop treating to allow others a better chance to live.
It's Thursday, May 9th, and this is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Mary Louise Kelly. And I'm Ari Shapiro. In Fulton County, Georgia, the judge overseeing the election interference case against Donald Trump is running for re-election.
So is the case's top prosecutor.
It is this unprecedented and bizarre confluence of the prosecutor, the judge, and one of the defendants all on a ballot.
Also, have China and Russia decided to wage war on democracy itself?
They have concluded that they need to carry this fight around the world. They need to be fighting those ideas wherever they come from and not only inside their own countries.
And the new line of Swiss Army knives features everything except a knife.
First, these headlines.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Jack Spear. Stormy Daniels concluded her testimony today. Prosecutors say former President Donald Trump green-lighted a hush money payment to the adult film actress during the 2016 campaign to keep her silent about their alleged sexual encounter years earlier. NPR's Andrea Bernstein reports the defense repeatedly confronted Daniels with inconsistencies in her story.
On Tuesday, Daniels had described feeling a power imbalance when she saw Trump in his underwear in his hotel room. Defense attorney Susan Neckles lit into Daniels, asking her why she hadn't talked about that in a 2011 interview with In Touch magazine, never published. But Daniels held her ground, saying it was an abbreviated interview. At the end of the cross-examination, Neckles asked, "Is the reason your story keeps changing because you never had an affair with President Trump and realized you could make money from selling your story?" "No," Daniels said. Prosecutors then came back with their own line of questioning, emphasizing consistencies in Daniels' story. On balance, has your publicly telling the truth been a net positive or a net negative in your life? The prosecutor asked. Negative, Daniels said. Andrea Bernstein, NPR News, New York.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the threat by President Biden to withhold some arms will not prevent Israel from further carrying out its offensive in Gaza. The Israeli leader reacting to comments from Biden and recent actions by the U.S. paused the shipment of 2,500-pound bombs to Israel. The U.S. has expressed concerns over Israel's plans to launch a major offensive in the southern Gaza city Rafah, with concerns over more civilian deaths on top of the tens of thousands who've already died. Netanyahu said Israel will stand alone if need be. Republican attorneys general from 25 states today filed a legal challenge to the Biden administration's new rules that limit climate pollution from power plants. NPR's Jeff Brady reports that the states argue the Environmental Protection Agency overstepped its authority.
The EPA labeled carbon dioxide a threat to public health and welfare 15 years ago. Since then, the fossil fuel industry and allies have successfully fought efforts to reduce the pollution from power plants. The EPA rule requires existing coal and new gas-fired power plants to run more than 40% of the time to capture 90% of their climate-warming smokestack emissions. The EPA says operators can meet that standard with existing technologies like carbon capture and storage. The lawsuit from Republican AGs is led by West Virginia and Indiana. Environmental groups say they're comfortable the EPA is on solid legal footing. Jeff Brady, NPR News.
Strong spending on the part of consumers has been one of the main bulwarks of current economic strength, though there are signs that pillar may be weakening a bit. Major consumer goods makers like PepsiCo and Kraft Heinz have described recently how the combination of high inflation and higher interest rates is starting to be felt by lower-income consumers. Spending by consumers drives roughly 3/4 of overall U.S. economic activity. This is NPR.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Jones Day, an integrated partnership collaboratively providing legal services for more than a century. 42 offices, 5 continents, serving clients as one firm worldwide. Learn more at jonesday.com.
Good evening. It's 6:04, 72 degrees in Cincinnati, 62 degrees in Dayton. This is 91.7 WBXU. I'm Bill Reinhardt. Attorneys for former Cincinnati Councilman P.G. Sittenfeld were in court this morning. The Cincinnati Business Courier's Chris Wederick says the 3-judge panel of the 6th Court of Appeals asked pointed questions about Sittenfeld's conviction on public corruption charges.
They really were focused on a recorded statement that Sittenfeld had made to Chinaduma Dukwe, who is a developer in town and who was part of the FBI sting. They were asking about a statement where Sittenfeld told Dukwe, "You don't want me to be like, hey Chin, like love ya, but can't." And what the implications of that statement were in terms of the case, whether that was, basically enough to convict him.
Wederick says defense attorneys argued if judges were to overturn the conviction, Sittenfeld should be set free immediately. It's not clear when the judges will decide. Source of power to run cars along Kentucky roadways remains a topic of discussion among state policymakers. One legislative step taken during the 2024 General Assembly was to roll back the surtax on public electric chargers. Kentucky Conservation Committee Director Wayne Boltman says that assessment had slowed EV charging.
The chargers that were being installed by these public programs are very simple chargers. They don't have meters, they can't meter the electricity. It became a headache to administer because you had to send in a monthly report on the electricity used and the tax.
Boltman says a fee for hybrid cars was also rolled back this last legislative session. Boltman is concerned some recommendations to the State Public Service Commission could slow efforts to develop more green power sources. The Reds got swept this afternoon with a loss to the Arizona Diamondbacks at Great American Ballpark. The score was 5-4. The Reds now head to San Francisco for a weekend series that starts tomorrow night. Chance of rain tonight, mostly cloudy and 50, mostly cloudy and 64 tomorrow. It's 72 degrees now.
This is All Things Considered from NPR News. I'm Ari Shapiro.
And I'm Mary Louise Kelly. Israel's closure of the main border crossing with Gaza has trapped American medical teams in Rafah, while aid officials report an ever-worsening humanitarian crisis unfolding. As NPR's Jana Raff reports, seasoned medical volunteers are facing heartbreaking decisions. And a warning, this story contains references to disturbing injuries.
This is an intensive care unit at a hospital in Rafah today. It was recorded by Dr. Amar Ghanem, one of more than a dozen American doctors and nurses who've worked non-stop since arriving 9 days ago.
The last 2 days, things are get much worse.
That's since Israel told people to evacuate because they were sending in ground forces to Rafah. They closed the nearby border crossing.
I estimate about 2 to 3 patients every day will die in this ICU because of lack of supplies, or equipment, or medical staff.
In the ICU, Dr. Ghanem, vice president of the Syrian American Medical Society, points out to a colleague, an 18-year-old patient.
The most difficult case really is this patient there. Which cannot be faked now, that is. Yeah.
Like many of the patients, she was wounded by shrapnel.
She had a fracture of the skull with part of her brain material showing up through the skull fracture.
The sedatives they have are not strong enough.
But we are using a large dose, and she's still not sedated.
Israel says it needs restrictions on aid to be able to prevent weapons from entering. The shortages mean medical staff end up making agonizing choices, deciding which patients to stop treating to allow others a better chance to live.
Unfortunately, and I have to prioritize patient lives. So when I say, okay, prioritizing patient lives, I know that term, but I never used it before until I came here.
Experienced trauma staff have never seen anything like this.
I'm nurse. I have been doing this work for 20 years, and I never saw the situation that we have in Gaza. The magnitude, the severity of the people in the hospital. Many of them, they are children.
That's Helena Ranshao of Médecins du Monde, the Doctors of the World, at a press briefing on Wednesday. Patients are dying of preventable causes.
We are choosing people to say, okay, these injuries, they are so severe that you will need so many resources that we decide that you will wait your death.
Dr. Nick Maynard from Oxford University in England was evacuated from Gaza Monday. He says increasing malnutrition is contributing to patient deaths.
And I genuinely believe we're seeing the tip of the iceberg in terms of the impact on mortality of malnutrition. I think it's going to get inevitably worse.
That's because malnourished patients with traumatic injuries are much less likely to recover.
The many thousands of amputees, their wounds are breaking down, their amputation stumps are breaking down, their bones are exposed. They will then die of that if they're not treated.
At the hospital in Rafah today, Monica Johnson, a burn nurse from Portland, Oregon, dizzy and nauseous from a gastrointestinal infection, was back in the ICU. One of her patients, a 7-year-old, with burns over 80% of his body.
We're running out of pain medicine, running out of blood pressure medicine, so we cannot keep these people alive or comfortable. It's absolutely horrifying what we're seeing here.
She said everyone was desperately hoping for a ceasefire.
This will enable us to finish our mission, enable new help to come in, new supplies to come in,
and eventually, she said, enable the team's safe return home. Jane Araf, NPR News, Amman.
Former President Donald Trump is on the ballot in Georgia this year, while he's also facing criminal charges there for trying to overturn the last election. And he's not the only key player in that case facing voters this year. So is the prosecutor and the judge. Sam Greenglass of member station WABE reports from Atlanta.
Fulton Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee's been all over the news, always at the bench, robed in black, as he presides over the criminal case of a former president. But this Saturday morning, McAfee's in a t-shirt and jeans, waving a gasoline can.
Look at this, to the rescue. This should get us about 1.5 miles into the parade. What do you think?
The gas is for a 65 red Cadillac Fleetwood.
Great uncles.
A Keep Judge McAfee sign is tied to the roof. McAfee's campaigning with his family in the Inman Park Parade.
I'll be honest, this is my first parade, so I'm a little nervous. You know, we'll see if anyone brought their tomatoes.
Republican Governor Brian Kemp appointed McAfee, then 33, to fill a vacant seat. 7 months later, the court randomly assigned him the Trump case. Now he's running for a full term, facing an opponent on the nonpartisan ballot. McAfee says talking to voters isn't a bad thing.
I've still got 400 other cases, and those folks put their lives on the line. They're asking me to understand where they're coming from, and I don't think I can do that without staying accessible.
In State v. Trump, McAfee's first big decision drew praise and pushback. He allowed Fulton County DA Fani Willis to remain on the case, but rebuked her conduct surrounding a romantic relationship with a special prosecutor she hired. An appeals court will review that ruling.
We can kind of zoom in on one particular decision and say, man, I don't think he got that one right. But my ultimate goal is when you look back and maybe look at the whole year's work, it's undeniable that I'm just trying to do the right thing and follow the law.
Voters of all political stripes want to tell McAfee what they think about the big case, but he can't say much. Along the parade route, McAfee chats with voter Dion Martin.
You look a little young to be a judge, but that's okay.
It's just a number, right?
That's true,
Okay.
that's true.
You getting out to vote?
Definitely will vote.
It's way down at the bottom.
I tell Martin that's the judge in the Trump case.
Oh, yes! Duh! Oh my goodness!
Martin has followed the case, including the claims against Willis.
And for this to come out, I was like, you know.